I think what you have is a tired old man who is less and less capable of doing things, whose wife and son both tell him, "You're doing great." His brother and his son have made a lot of money off the family name, and they have learned to be openly, cheerfully dishonest on the grounds that nobody will challenge them. To what extent do you believe anything Joe Biden says? So Biden may tell you it's about legacy. I think it's about power. And we're asking Biden to quit being the most powerful person on the planet.
All right, guys. It's unbelievable that we're here in July and this much is happening politically. We are under 7 days from the start of the RNC. The schedule, by the way, and the platform, I'm going to talk to you quickly about some of the updates there released yesterday, last evening. KJP having an absolute meltdown in the briefing room. Gosh, I feel so bad. Nope. And House Democrats met this morning. It wasn't good. They are now 12 days after this debate trying to figure out how to handle the Biden situation. Where do we go from here as a party? Unbelievable. Newt Gingrich is going to be here to help us break down where things are historically and where they are politically and where we move forward. Speaking of which, James Carville has a brand new op-ed out in the New York Times. I'm going to talk to Speaker Gingrich about this. He says Biden's not going to be the nominee. I'm going to ask him about it. And then tomorrow, by the way, we've got a Democratic operative on the show, and I'm going to ask them, are they comfortable with Joe Biden as the nominee? Do they think, as Carville does, that you got to replace the guy now, and here's how he suggests you do it? I will ask her tomorrow, but the Democrats have a lot of answering to do about not just this campaign, but whether Biden should be governing for 4 more years. I think that's a legitimate question that's not getting asked. Let's get back to all of the issues that I was telling you about before we get into it with Speaker Gingrich. The platform of the RNC got released yesterday, and it's, speaking of Gingrich, it's Contract with America style, 20 bullet points, unbelievable, right? And this is, having drafted a couple of these, been part of that process, this is the smart way to do this. Easy to understand themes that people understand where you are, where you stand for, what you stand for. I think they got it right. Everyone's freaking out about the pro-life language, and I think that Donald Trump's position on this, as you've seen, I'm as pro-life as they come. I don't want a world in which babies are aborted. I want to promote life. The platform recognized this. It gets out there, and everybody's worried because it doesn't call for a national ban anymore. Here's the problem. It's not that I'm not supportive of that. It's that it's unrealistic. You're not getting 60 seats in the Senate. It's just not going to happen. Okay? So President Trump has said this, we fought to overturn Roe, which sent it back to the states. And this is now happening state by state with voters' input. That's how it should be. And I think we're doing it the right way. The platform focused on things like making us energy independent, securing the border, making us prosperous. And when you read this, I tweeted out the 20 points that they put together. It's digestible. It's something that if someone says, what does your party stand for? You can go, boom, here are the 20 points. Very Contract with America, like I said. It focuses on protecting seniors. Not everything in there I agree with. I'll be honest with you. That's not what it's for. It's not meant to get everybody on the world. But if you can get 80%, isn't that what Reagan said? Okay, I'm higher than 80%, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, I think that the way that they handled it this cycle was a lot better. And then they announced the programming for the convention. It's 4 days, as you know. So Monday is going to be Make America Wealthy once again. Tuesday is going to be Make America Safe once again. Wednesday, Make America Strong once again. Thursday, Make America Great once again. You notice the once again, right? Harkening back to the 4 years that Trump had in office. That's a key part of this. The current schedule, historically, is that the VP will make their speech Wednesday night and Trump will accept the nomination on Thursday night. This is going to be a big difference than the Dem convention, right? In the sense that Biden's got to accept that nomination virtually through a roll call prior to his speech because the dummies don't own a calendar and forgot when the Ohio ballot deadline was. Now, they forgot it in Alabama as well, but the Alabama state legislature are extending it for them, which I think was kind of silly, but whatever. So this is going to be a really great week. I think Trump talked about it a little last night on an interview that he had with Sean Hannity. I guess that Thursday, Friday, right in there before the convention, like this week, he will announce that VP nominee. He's not going to wait. He wants them to get some excitement and get going, be able to obviously, becoming the nominee takes a minute, right? You want to draft your speech and get your thoughts together. So I think that's what's going to happen. As I said, the fallout from the debate continues, but now it's shifting into this medical issue. Over the weekend, the New York Times and the New York Post revealed that this doctor, Dr. Kennard, who's a neurologist that specializes in Parkinson's, visited the White House 8 times. The New York Post revealed meetings in which the president's personal doctor, Kevin O'Connor, was in meetings with him and an unknown person. Well, who's that unknown person? Gosh, who would possibly not need to get waved into a meeting? Who else would be living at the White House? Anyway, I digress. I want to play you a clip from the briefing room because everyone this morning is like, wow, KJP, whatever. I'm like, this is what it was like every day for me. I'm sorry that she's losing the press. These are her buddies. She's like, hey, guys, remember I used to work with some of you at CNN or MSNBC, wherever she was. Yeah, she was at MS, I think, right? She's like, you're my buddies. My old partner was at CNN. We're all in the family, right? Why are you getting so hard? She literally said Ed O'Keefe of CBS News, who's basically a scribe for the Democratic Party. I mean, he's the guy that asked him about his feelings and ice cream and all that. That's the guy. She was like, Ed, you're disrespecting me. Are you kidding me? They have legitimate questions about why a Parkinson's doctor is visiting the White House 8 times. And she's giving this word salad about, remember the last time, and I talked about it from here, and we talked, whatever. I want to play you this clip, though.
Ed, I also said to you, for security reasons, we cannot share names. We cannot share names.
You cannot
we
share
have
names
to. We have
of
to.
Others he would have met with.
We cannot,
you can share names in regards to if someone came here in regards to the president.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names.
Okay, just pause for a second. Do you want to know why we know Dr. Kennard's name? Because it's in a public log. It's in a public log. They released that. There's no security issue here. The only reason we know it is because he got waved into the White House on a log that was released of the visitors. That's pretty public. There's no security issue. Now, is there a HIPAA issue? A health issue of revealing who he saw? Yes, and that's why she's being asked, did he meet with the president? Now, I want to play you her go on about this is the sleight of hand. This is where if you've never worked in the White House, and this is why what I bring to the table is so valuable. She's trying to make it seem like, oh, he could have been seeing anyone. Here's her talking about the military piece of this.
I understand that. I hear you.
Right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you. I cannot from here confirm any of that because we have to keep their privacy. What do you miss about? What do you miss about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
Correctly, you didn't have to come back and clean it up.
I never answered the question incorrectly. That is not true. I was asked about a medical exam. I was asked about a physical. That was in the line of question that I answered. And I said, no, he did not have a medical exam. And I still stand by that. Matter of fact, the president still stands by that. He had a verbal check-in. That is something that the president has a couple times a week. A couple times a week.
Now in regards to Dr. Kevin Kennard.
And I am telling you right now that I am not confirming names from here. It is the security reasons. I am not going to do that, Ed.
All right. This is silly. This is absolutely ridiculous. But she goes on, and I want to play this clip for you real quick, where she talks about the fact that Dr. Kennard, that specialist, could be there to see thousands of people from the White House. Here it is.
Okay. Confirm the name. Can you confirm whether or not the president has seen this Parkinson's specialist? And you mentioned 3 times that the visitor logs show a duration of 8 visits over 8 months. I think that is the crux of the question.
But I also said there are thousands of military personnel that come to the White House, and they are under the care of the medical unit. They are.
Okay. Now, that's just not true. That is not true. The White House military folks that are there don't get their, beyond like an emergency. If they have a routine appointment, they go to Walter Reed, they go to another military facility. They don't get their primary care or their specialty care at the White House. 100% false. Not true. Now, I know most of the press corps doesn't know that. I'm not ragging on them. Actually, that's a legitimate thing that they wouldn't know. I do. I work there. That's not how it works. And she's pretending like this specialist, this highly credentialed Parkinson's specialist, somehow is treating random enlisted folks in the White House military office that we don't want to disclose there. That's not true. Not true. That's not how it works. And the White House press office was misleading people when it tried to pretend that somehow all of these individuals in the military that work in and out of the White House get their care there, especially their specialty care. Not true. All right. Before I bring in Speaker Newt Gingrich, who, by the way, has got a great Substack at Gingrich 360. You can go to gingrich360.com to check it out. A great podcast, Newt's World. Check all that out. All right, let me bring in Speaker Newt Gingrich. Well, Mr. Speaker, how are you? A very boring time in politics, isn't it?
I've never seen anything like it, and I would say that includes the Nixon-Watergate crisis. This is amazing.
I feel like there's a bunch of people in Hollywood going, I don't know that we could have ever gotten away with writing something like this, and now we're living through it.
It's, well, I think it's the total complexity. I mean, it would be one thing if Biden was really terrible and collapsed. But what we're watching is, and I thought Brett Baer caught it perfectly when he said, it's like the scene in The Godfather where they go to the mattresses. I mean, The Biden family has decided they're prepared to take everyone out if that's what it takes, but they ain't leaving.
Yeah, I want to break down several things. Like, I want to talk about just crises in general, because I think you're hitting on something about how they haven't stemmed the bleeding. But I want to start with something that you quasi are familiar with this morning, but from the other side. This morning, the House Democratic Caucus met down at their headquarters. They all, as the Republicans do, and you're well aware of that, every week. And so, but this is the angle that I want to take you from. Outside the meeting were a bunch of staffers from the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, which obviously you're very familiar with. And they were holding these signs that said Joe Biden is unfit for office, because obviously a lot of media trying to pick off members as they went in. My contention is that this is a mistake for our side to be urging Biden to get out of the race. Let them do this. Why are we doing it? Because number one, why get in the way of them? But number two, and this is where I want you to either push back on me and tell me I'm wrong, or tell me why I'm onto something. But I feel like I would rather play Biden in this game, if you will. We know him. We have every bit of oppo on him. The American people know him. Then at the X factor, right? Probably Kamala Harris, maybe someone new. But why are we trying to urge him to get out? Let this process play out. It benefits us. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I mean, I think Trump was correct on Hannity when he said that he's convinced Biden's staying in.
Right.
And I've said all along, first of all, if your alternative is the White House, Marine One, Air Force One, Camp David, or bicycling in Delaware, why would you pick bicycling in Delaware? And it's clear that Jill feels strongly, Hunter feels strongly, and they're reinforcing Biden's natural stubbornness. So my working assumption is that he's probably not going to go anywhere. There was a day or two when I thought the avalanche might build. But here's the other thing. When Nixon stepped down, he had major Republican leaders saying they would vote to impeach him. In Biden's case, you would have to, I think, employ the 25th Amendment. And it's not going to happen. And the Black Caucus is so strongly for Biden, despite the opportunity for Kamala Harris to become the nominee. They have clearly indicated that they will, in fact, go to the mattresses to fight for him. So my view would be the less we say, the more we allow it to roll out. And Trump has been remarkably disciplined for the last week.
Best week he's had.
And just let it roll out. Let the New York Times every other day write an attack piece. Let the Wall Street Journal every day write an attack piece. And let the Washington Post every third day write an attack piece and see how it plays out. Biden's not going to get any stronger. And it's probably, sadly, his mental condition is going to get worse and become visibly worse, which I think anybody who's had an adult relative go through this kind of cognitive change can watch it with a sense of sympathy and sadness and really wonder why Jill's putting him through this.
I think that's the concern a lot of people have. But here's what I don't get. This morning, James Carville, who, long-standing political operative, writes in the New York Times, and this I want to read directly from this so we're not mincing words. He says, "Mark my words, Joe Biden is going to be out of the 2024 presidential race. Whether he is ready to admit it or not, his pleas on Monday to congressional Democrats for support will not unite the party behind him. Mr. Biden is staying in the race, but it's only a matter of time before the Democratic pressure and public and private polling lead him to exit the race. The jig is up, and the sooner Mr. Biden and Democratic leaders accept this, the better. We need to move forward." Now, I agree with you and your assessment, but what are we missing that James Carville isn't?
Well, first of all, Carville likes being a contrarian, and it doesn't hurt his speech business, and it doesn't hurt his long-term reputation. Second, I think in his mind, he has a dynamic vision that we're going to see more mistakes, and that, day by day, people are going to realize, this guy couldn't possibly serve 4 years. I was shocked. I don't know about you, but Calista and I were in Rome, and we got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the debate. And I thought, from our side, if Biden made 2 or 3 mistakes in 90 minutes, that would be pretty good for our team. I was stunned and frankly felt bad about the total collapse of that debate. I've never seen anything like it. And I think that was a turning point, because after a year of denying that he was getting weaker, the whole country realized that they'd been lied to. And I think what Carville's gambling is that there's a trajectory of decline, and that trajectory accelerates, and that you're going to see more examples of Biden not being capable of being president. Not just a question of winning or losing, not being capable of being president.
So, right. But that's what I think we all see. This is not a one-off. It wasn't a bad night. It wasn't a cold. It wasn't jet lag. The reality is you get older and those conditions exacerbate. So Carville gets it. I think he understands that it's not going to get better for Biden. But the political reality is that, as Trump said on Hannity last night, Biden has the delegates. He gets to decide, and he has no sign of going anywhere. And that's where I think, I get it. And you brought this up before. Is he making a mistake listening entirely to Jill and Hunter as opposed to trusted aides? You've been in these big decisions before, right? Who do you listen to?
Look, first of all, there are pretty good arguments that if you have his kind of cognitive problems, you don't listen to many people, if anyone. And that there's a pattern of people as they get older getting more stubborn and rejecting information that doesn't please them. So you have that problem. You also have a really simple question here. And I've said this for about 8 months now. He has no upside leaving. First of all, if he announces that because he's so fragile, he can't run for re-election, that immediately asks the question, well, then shouldn't you step down? How can you stay as president for the next 6 months if you're too fragile to be in a campaign? So there's where they've now found themselves, there's no good outcome, I think is how I would describe it. And if you're Biden, you're sitting in the White House surrounded by your wife and your son. What's the genuine pressure way to do anything?
Well, isn't it legacy? I mean, I've always argued that Biden's legacy is all of these people he's appointed, Pete Buttigieg, Ketanji Brown Jackson, that he wants to be seen as the progressive North Star that said, I put the first LGBTQIA C3PO 526 in office. I did this as part of my cabinet. I appointed this black woman, this transgender person. And that by maybe handing the mantle off to the first female black nominee, that would be seen as the Biden legacy. I did this. I created this environment. To your point, I mean, I think if he loses to Trump, which there's no way he doesn't right now, and he goes down epically, that will be his legacy. And I think that Biden is more concerned. He always talks about my word as a Biden, and everything's about the Biden legacy and my uncle this and Joey that. I think he's really concerned more about legacy than accomplishment.
First of all, to what extent do you believe anything Joe Biden says? So Biden may tell you it's about legacy. I think it's about power. And we're asking Biden to quit being the most powerful person on the planet. The Bidens have been grifters ever since he first won. They've had all sorts of deals in Delaware. His brother and his son have made a lot of money off the family name. And they have learned to be openly, cheerfully dishonest on the grounds that nobody will challenge them. And so they just say whatever they want to say. And in Biden's case, he says all sorts of stuff and has always said all sorts of stuff that makes no sense. So if you said to him, doesn't your legacy really matter? He would say, oh, yes, the Biden name is really important to me. If you said to him, well, that means you should give up. He would say, no. The Biden legacy is never give in. The Bidens are never quitters. And what he'll tell you is what he thinks he has. He's a little bit like a clumsy and not very bright version of Bill Clinton. I mean, Clinton has, as you know, has this marvelous capacity to look you in the eye, tell you that it's Christmas. And by the time he's done talking to you, you're looking for the mistletoe. And it's all a lie. It's just, but he does it so well that you kind of like being part of the dance. Well, Biden has the same characteristic of dishonesty as Bill, but he has none of the skills. And so in the end, I think what you have is a tired old man who is less and less capable of doing things, whose wife and son both tell him you're doing great. And most of his senior staff, who remember, their power and their money come from being his people. So most of them are saying, we can get there. You came from behind. You know how to do this. We can beat Trump. And nobody else can. And frankly, I think it's likely, as weak as he now is, I think he's probably the best chance the Democrats have. I just did a piece for Gingrich 360 called Collapsing with Kamala. And I do think anybody else they try to put in at this stage is likely to actually run worse than Biden.
So Biden's got, you get the family of the A's, right? So he's got Jill and Hunter, then he's got Mike Donnellan and Steve Ricchetti, Bruce Reed, and Anita Dunn. But you have your Joe Gaylord, the person that's been around you forever, giving you political. Joe Gaylord comes to you one day and says, is that the kind of person in your experience that you go, you know what, if Joe says it, or do you say, you know what, Joe, I'm going to go talk to Callista instead? Like, you've been at the highest levels. Who is it that you would have respected that comes to you and says, Mr. Speaker, the jig is up, we got to go? Is it the political people, the family, the combination?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I think in a situation where it's literally political life and death, if you have a good relationship with your spouse, they count a lot. Nancy Reagan had huge influence over Ronnie, and nobody should be confused about that. Now, conversely, I don't think that Mamie Eisenhower had the same level. She and Ike had a very affectionate relationship, but they had a pretty severe distinction between his job as a general or his job as a president and their personal relationship. So I think Nixon had great affection for Pat and in many ways listened to Pat. And they endured Watergate together. I think, frankly, that the Carters were very, very much one unit. And I think that she had as much influence on Jimmy as anybody. So it partly depends. But here you've got a guy, remember also, when you get to be his age, and, for example, you're a little worried walking up and down stairs, because falling really is a significant problem at his age. The person you most rely on is Jill. Well, that creates a sense of dependency. And so she says, as the person who's closest to him, the person who protects him, and she's telling him positive things. I mean, I think if she were saying to him, why don't you drop out for your legacy, that might be a different conversation. But she's telling him what he wants to hear. You're doing great. Remember that whole scene after the debate?
You answered every question, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and then, I don't know if you picked up on it, but I thought when she turns and she says, and what did Trump do? He lied. The way she yelled lied reminded me immediately of Governor Dean in Iowa in the primary.
The Dean scream, we're going up in New Hampshire. We're going to Iowa. Whoa!
Yeah. She had some of that, over the top kind of, we're really positive. We're really not giving in.
I want to go back to the post-debate fallout, right? And this is where I want to tap into your expertise from a crisis communication standpoint. I felt like they acknowledged they had a bad night that night. I mean, Kamala comes on air and says, it wasn't the best night, but 3.5 years, good talking points, whatever. And then they let this time go by. Like literally, we're here at day 12 and they're still worried about members of Congress. I cannot believe, based on what you and I both agree the outcome is, that Joe Biden digs in, stays as the nominee, the idea that rank and file and even committee chairmen on the House side, on the Democratic House side, are coming out now, 12 days later. I don't get that politically. I get the day after or whatever saying, hey, I have a problem here. But why would you wait 12 days, 10 days as a rank and file member? That to me seems like, wow, you're cutting off your political future real quick.
Well, I think, first of all, my impression is that they didn't believe it was as bad as it was. So I think the first reaction of the White House was sort of what they've said. We had a bad night. And they didn't realize that, no, they didn't have a bad night. They had a cataclysmic night. They had a night that changed the perception of 100 million Americans. Second, because they didn't realize how bad it was, they didn't go to an immediate rescue operation. And it was only as the media began to pile on that and when nobody was jumping up to defend him. I think part of the lag was this was so much worse than they thought possible. Their campaign manager doesn't have the kind of authority that Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita have for Trump. So they're not able to turn, and they don't have a machine. I think the Trump people could reach out and touch virtually every elected Republican within 12 hours. I think the Biden people literally weren't prepared for that kind of all-out grassroots, get them back in line, talk to them, reassure them. And so it grew out of control. Now, I think they're getting it back in control. And it's starting from their real base, which is the Black Caucus. And the fact that the Black Caucus is going to be militant, given its size in the Democratic Party, almost guarantees that an anti-Biden rebellion can't occur successfully.
So put yourself back in the shoes. They met, as I said this morning, as a caucus. Hakeem Jeffries, according to Playbook and everyone else, was going to be in listen mode. Should he be in lead mode, right? Should he and Pelosi, as the elders and the leaders of that caucus, be saying, guys, Biden's made it clear he's going to be the nominee. No more dissension among the ranks? We're all on board on this. Or should he be? I mean, it seems like there's a lack of Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries trying to say to the flock, guys, get in line. And is that the right move or no?
Well, I've always followed a model of listen, learn, help, and lead. So I would say you walk into a room, because here's what happens. You're dealing with independently elected people. This isn't like a cabinet where you appoint them and you fire them. They're independently elected. So if you try to be a cheerleader, what you can do is you can suppress them and they'll shut up. But that doesn't mean they've changed their mind. It just means they've decided they don't want to take you on. On the other hand, if you let everybody ventilate, everybody gets to say, here's how I feel, here's how my district feels. First of all, you know that over half of them are going to say, my district wants Biden to stay. So you gradually build a growing majority. You'll have a bunch of them who are wavering, and as they see where the boat is going, they'll decide to get on it. And then you'll have a small group that really does think this is hopeless, but they also will begin to shut up because if, in fact, he is the inevitable nominee, and if, in fact, the party is going to unify around him, then it hurts their reelection to be seen as anti-Biden.
Right.
And so I think that's probably the model they're trying to work off of.
So the big next evolution of this crisis was yesterday, that press briefing. Unreal. But let's keep it in context. I think I got a question this morning. Somebody said to me, what did you think? I forgot how they phrased it, but my point was, oh my God, I dealt with that every day. I think Corinne has just never had to have somebody challenge her on something. The questions about the Parkinson's and this visit from the doctor. I feel like this is the real issue that they're screwing up now, is that they need to reassure. Yes, we all know he's getting older. Everybody knows that because that's just life. The Parkinson's issue or another disease issue is where they've got to tread very carefully, because if there are concerns about some kind of debilitating disease, then they need to be out in front of this. I felt like yesterday was so just ill-managed, unprofessional on Corinne's part. She was not prepared for this, and it was in the New York Post and the New York Times. She should have come out and taken this head on. And the idea that Dr. O'Connor is putting out a letter later that day does not instill a sense of confidence in the president's medical condition.
Look, I think this is the situation where if they can get a specialist who can say with honesty, I've reviewed it. He has some limited cognitive problems, but I am confident that he can serve for the next 4 years as president and that this will not be permanently damaging. That's worth its weight in gold. Now, if in fact they can't get a doctor to say that, then this thing's never going to go away. And I think people have not yet factored in. We were shocked at how bad Biden was the night of the debate. We have not yet taken into account that the real question here is, are you willing to vote for this guy for 4 more years, given what you've seen? That's a much different issue than can he get from here to January. And I think overwhelmingly, even Democrats now, when you look at polling data, do not believe he can serve 4 years.
I don't think that this, and to your point, this is a sympathetic thing. I don't want him. Not only is I look at this as the leader of the country, the leader of the free world, but then as a human being, I don't want somebody to have to deal with that, and face it. And personally, and I cannot believe that they're going through this. He's got 2 big hurdles the rest of the week, the way I see this. Number one, you've got these NATO meetings, and the hurdle is not having leaks come out from leaders in their top aides saying he dozed off, he was incoherent, etc. And then secondly, what the White House themselves, unbelievably, is branding a big boy press conference. If he doesn't get through both of these with A's, do you think that Friday morning we wake up and have a different conversation about the state of this race?
Yeah, I think particularly if he has either a truly major mistake or if he melts down in the press conference. I mean, why you would take him through a major international meeting with 26 other leaders and then turn around and the next day have an hour-long press conference? That makes no sense at all. I remember years ago, Bob Novak told me a story about pacing and politicians and said that when Reagan became governor, he called Reagan's press guy and said, I'd like to come out and spend 2 or 3 days with the governor and then have a chance to really interview him in depth. And Lynn Nofziger said to him, you must think I'm crazy. You're going to get 30 minutes with me in the room. That's it. Because he understood that 2 or 3, even with a guy as brilliant as Reagan, 2 or 3 days, you'll find 5 or 6 things that make him look bad. And you shouldn't voluntarily do that. So I would say, one, I don't know why they would schedule it on Thursday.
Yeah.
Because he's probably going to be tired. I mean, and that's true of everybody. I mean, Reagan once fell asleep while talking with Pope John Paul II because it was his first trip to Europe. And they hadn't set aside enough time for Reagan to rest before the meeting. And they learned from that. Every future meeting after that had a time to recover and time to be totally fresh. Why you would take a guy who collapsed during a debate, turn around, have him do 3 heavy days. Because remember, in between each NATO meeting, he's talking to Democrats. He's saying, I can run, I can do this. And so, I mean, he is on a treadmill. Why you would do that makes no sense to me.
But let's just play this out. If he has an episode, an incident, an issue, that press conference, what's the conversation we're having Friday morning?
Well, I think you then see a renewed sense that he has to go. And again, the real issue that hasn't been joined is not can he survive to Election Day. The real issue is if he won, can you imagine the guy you're watching serve 4 years as commander-in-chief? And I think 1 or 2 more mistakes, you're going to be at 90% of the country saying no.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think it's a little hard to see how they avoid having a real rebellion to get him off the ticket.
So just to be clear, let's just play this out for fun. If he were to step aside voluntarily, do you agree that Kamala Harris will be the nominee, or do you see somebody else, the Gavin Newsom, the Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, becoming the nominee?
I don't see, given the power structure of that party, how you push aside a black female vice president. I think you'd have a civil war. And I think you would have the most loyal and most militant part of the party go crazy. So my assumption is, and this is why I wrote my piece on collapsing with Kamala, because I think that when you really look at her record and you really look, I mean, you know, she's the border czar, and she's visited the border once in 3.5 years. Just take item after item. And she is, I think, much weaker than Biden once you're in a real campaign.
I do too, but here's what I would just throw at you. I keep using the baseball analogy, right? If Biden is our batter right now, we know every stat about him. We know that he's never hit the ball when we pitch. I mean, we know we're going to win with Biden at the plate. Okay. That's how I look at this politically. Kamala gets up to bat if Biden has to, and she becomes the DH. I worry that the dynamic has changed. And that who knows? I mean, my point is, I get all that, the border, you name it, whatever. But suddenly, maybe she fires up black women. Maybe she fires up women in general. I don't know. But here's what I know. I don't want to deal with it. I want to deal with what I know, the knowns. And I know we can beat Biden and that he loses the House and the Senate with him. I would, and so that's why I keep saying I worry about any effort on our side to push him. Because I believe that Kamala will lose There's no question about it for all the reasons that you enumerated. However, there's X factors, and I don't like X factors.
Well, I think Donald Trump agrees with you. I mean, I think that's what he was saying on Hannity, that, he is quite happy to have Joe Biden as his opponent.
Yeah. Okay. Speaker Gingrich, I appreciate it. I know that you've got a cold, jet lag.
I apologize.
A bad night.
But luckily, I'm not running for president, and this wasn't a debate.
I know. That's the beauty. I always appreciate your historical wisdom and insight, political acumen. This is, thank you for sharing and being so generous with your time as always.
Right. Good to be with you.
All right. Take care. All right. Great conversation with Newt Gingrich. And remember, tomorrow I've got a Democratic operative on the show that's going to answer this Democrat James Carville's op-ed in the New York Times saying Biden's not going to be the nominee, and here's how they can go about it. I want to hear a Democrat answer for that. Continue to subscribe, YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get those podcasts. We'll see you back here tomorrow.